Welcome back to our program. Earlier, we discussed life under the party. Now, I will be interviewing a party member and diving deep into his experiences during the rule of Big Brother. Hello. First, I want to thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, for our first question, what was your position in the party and what was your job?
So I was an average party member, and I worked at the Ministry of Plenty in the Resource Allocation Department.
And what are some of your experiences during the rule of the party in terms of your daily life?
Every morning, they broadcast a kind of warm-up program that you were required to watch and participate in. It took a good portion of your morning, and after that, there wasn't much time for breakfast or time to think before I had to go to work.
So your morning was kind of on a rail.
Yeah, exactly.
Was the rest of your day like this?
At work, yes. Once you got to work, everyone had to get together and watch what was called the 2 minutes of hate speech. Everyone sit in rows and watch the video that would try to rile everyone up against Goldstein and Eurasia or East Asia, depending on which we were at war with.
Did this occur every day of the week?
Yes, every day we would sit together, and as the video played, we would all start to feel this hatred build into us, like the message on the screen was becoming our own thoughts. By the end, everyone was thinking the same hateful thoughts, yelling and screaming, invigorated to help the party. Then everyone got to work, and you didn't stop working until lunch and work's end. Even after that, though, you still had party activities you needed to attend, like hikes, group meetings, and rallies. So you were always doing something.
No rest and no time to think.
Yeah, almost no time for anything but party mandated activities.
So what happened during the hate week and how did you feel during and after the week?
Hate Week was a super scaled version of the 2 minutes of hate. It needed weeks of setup and planning, and it seemed like everything was working towards it. Once Hate Week started, it completely dominated your time and attention. There were meetings, rallies, and all sorts of activities commemorating the fight against the enemies of the party.
It was like a big festival.
Yeah, you couldn't help but get swept up in the anger. You would lose yourself and join in. You didn't think, you just acted as one. All the feelings would linger on sometime after Hate Week ended.
In what ways did the uniforms and collective activities erode your sense of individuality?
The effect of the uniforms were not as noticeable at the time, but they made you think that you were the same as everyone else around you. You were nothing special or impactful. Everyone was one nameless cog in the machine that ran the party.
So having everything stripped away meant that you were useful to the party?
Yes, we were workers. Everything else seemed irrelevant or rebellious to the party.
How did your actions in private and public differ?
There were only a few handful times where I was completely private, free to think and act as I pleased. It was completely foreign to me. In public, you had to act a certain way to survive. You couldn't show any sort of discontent. You certainly couldn't stand out in the way you acted or spoke.
You couldn't even act or speak as you wanted?
No. Speaking out would mean getting vaporized, or getting caught and taken away. It was too dangerous to think, let alone act out of place.
From what you have been telling me, your life was, for the most part, not in your control.
Absolutely. The party controlled your schedule, your activities, and to a certain extent, your thoughts.
So even your own thoughts weren't always your own.
Yeah, it was natural at the time, but looking back, it's terrifying.
During your past experiences, was your identity defined by your actions or by the party's will?
Since the party controlled so much of my life, it manipulated my actions, keeping me from forming my own distinct identity. I didn't have enough control over my life to be my own person.
Well, thank you so much for accepting our invitation to come out to talk about your experiences. And thank you for sharing the real story about how it felt to live under Big Brother and the party.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you for having me on.
That's all for now. Next, we will elaborate about the role of propaganda and the alteration of history, but that'll come after the break.